Plus, Nissan will make the first 3 payments for you. You'll love your new Frontier as much as I do mine. Plus, they're giving away cash, all sorts of prizes. Way too much to share in a 30-second commercial, so visit the showroom or visit the website, nissanguam.com today.
State of Kansas will bar transgender athletes from playing on girls' or women's scholastic sports teams.
The Republican-led legislature overriding Governor Kelly's third veto in 3 years of a bill barring trans female athletes on school teams and club sports starting from as young as the kindergarten level. The Kansas law takes effect July 1st, with 19 other states having imposed bans on transgender athletes in some capacity. This comes after a measure approved by Kansas lawmakers Tuesday that would not only prevent transgender people from using public restrooms and other facilities associated with their gender identities, but also bar them from changing their name or gender on driver's licenses. Governor Kelly is expected to veto that measure as well. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
New Mexico's Governor Grisham has signed a bill protecting abortion providers in the state from prosecution. It also shields doctors providing gender-affirming care. A man with a hatchet burst into a daycare center in Brazil, killing 4 children and wounding at least 4 others. Children killed were between the ages of 5 and 7. The man turned himself in to police, who say they have no idea what motivated him. It's been an earthquake in the Ring of Fire, a 5.1 magnitude undersea quake in the southern East Pacific Rise off the coast of South America. Fox's Jill Nato has a real-life snakes on a plane story.
South African pilot Rudolf Erasmus didn't notice he had an extra passenger on board his private plane until he was 11,000 feet in the air. He told the BBC he felt a cool sensation on his back and at first thought it was a water bottle. Instead, it was a Cape Cobra. A bite from this kind of cobra can kill a human in just 30 minutes. So the pilot warned his 4 human passengers and then safely made an emergency landing. At last word, engineers have torn apart the plane but have yet to find the cobra. Jill Nato, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $4,100 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 671-475-4545, Upper Tumon 671-647-5626, or in Dededo 671-633-4473.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglonia from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And it isn't Friday, it's Thursday, but we won't be here tomorrow. Jose and I will be doing religious type things tomorrow on Good Friday, so no tall tales. So today is going to be Tall Tales Friday as far as your wardrobe is concerned. So if you're not wearing your Tall Tales shirt today, it's okay. But when you're out strolling on Saturday, make sure you wear your Tall Tales shirt. All right. Let's start the show the way we would on any other Friday. Zemi Ikotny. Just another really hard-hitting editorial from the Daily News today. Our view, approve extension of monthly power bill credit. A proposal to extend the $500 energy power credit is coming just in time for the hottest months on Guam, when our power consumption and our power bills increase. Programan Ajuda para Itautauta Energy Credit Program began last year and has provided relief for Guam Power Authority customers who have been paying record prices for fuel surcharge known as the Levelized Energy Adjustment Clause, or LEAC. Haftay mo na masyangin LEAC gifino tomorrow, Jose?
Si LEAC. I don't know.
Well, if it's somebody's name, yeah. C, S-I-C, and tomorrow is a marker for a proper noun for somebody's name. So
For Mr. Lee.
yeah. So see, Lee Ack. Yeah. Hey, Malik for me tomorrow. How good night.
I adapt.
Yeah. The LEAC makes up the highest part of the power bill and allows GPA to recover the costs of fuel. It was raised 3 times between July and November 2022. In July of last year, customers began receiving a $100 monthly credit to help with these rising costs. After the first round of $100 credits, the program was extended and the final credit will be applied to our April bills. Speaker Therese Terlahi has introduced Bill 83, which would extend the program for another 5 months. The proposal has the support of Legislative Budget Chair Senator Joe San Augustine. We urge the senators to approve the measure, and we ask the governor to sign it into law. A call to action. The bill states that lawmakers intend to extend relief to taxpayers. Now, look at the way they write this. To relief to taxpayers on Guam. Is it necessary to say on Guam, Jose?
Well, you know, there's those few people who fly out here just to gas their car up.
Yeah.
Make sure that they have a break also.
Yeah.
Or not to gas the car, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Relief to ratepayers on Guam. We
There
have
you
a
go.
lot of ratepayers that live in Nevada, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Will continue to experience price increases in various commodities and services, particularly the many vulnerable individuals who are struggling and most impacted by the effects of the global pandemic and inflation. The extension would be paid with $26.3 million in excess tax revenues that the government collected last fiscal year. The payments are applied to all bills of residential, master metered, and commercial customers, all 52,762 of us. For the average power customer who uses 1,000 kilowatts per month, the monthly power bill is $416.10. Wow. That's a lot. $100 credits no doubt have helped some people avoid disconnection. Bill 83 calls for the program to be extended beginning with payments in May. The credits will continue through the hot summer months and end in September. That's good news because fuel surcharge rates are scheduled to be reevaluated in July, What happens then depends on how deep in the hole GPA is for fuel purchases. Okay, well, I got to make some comments here. First of all, you know where I start out. When it comes to government, our government is my mantra. An effective, efficient government that provides basic government, as it were, basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. Okay, so I suppose we could make an argument that providing electricity is a basic government service. There's plenty of room to disagree here because that should be something that's done by a private company. And it would be done by a private company, except that when the Navy ran the island after World War II, the Navy had to provide all basic government services because there was nothing left. So we started out owning power, water, telephone, etc., and we're still kind of stuck with it. But it's tolerable. It's not a slam dunk to say that it's not a governmental service. And as a general principle, our government should be a no free lunch type of an operation. In other words, some people shouldn't get freebies at the expense of others. It's not a basic government service to reallocate wealth among citizens. Subsidies, if you want more of something, you want to encourage more of something, then subsidize it. If you want less, tax it. Do we want higher electricity consumption? You know, the greenies would tell you no. So in that case, $100 subsidy to every ratepayer, maybe not such a good idea. On the other hand, now, to me, the real important part of this editorial is a kind of a by the way it's written, and it's this. The extension would be paid for with the $26.3 million in excess tax revenue that GovGuam collected last fiscal year. Governments have no business collecting excess tax revenue.
That was highlighted for me when I read it, and it should have been in boldface. You're right.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I focused on.
Well, you know, if you think about it a little bit, the best way to write something that has persuasive power is to use what the Army calls bottom line up front. That should have been the first sentence in this editorial. We're $26 million ahead. We can afford this. The government has no business, quote, making a profit.
And this is not relief. Once they put that out there, it's no longer relief. It's a rebate. You're getting your money back.
To the extent that probably you could count the number of people on this island that don't have power.
Right.
With 12 fingers. Yeah, it is a rebate. Now, folks that are off the grid for one reason or another would say, that's not fair. It's not really a rebate, but it's de minimis. Yeah, so it does amount to a rebate, giving back an overpayment of taxes. And that's the way the thing should have been written. But, of course, you have to always talk about vulnerable people, and I'm surprised they didn't have to use marginalized in there somewhere. Okay, could have been a good editorial, Daily News. But as we say, close but no cigar. When we're talking close but no cigar, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Let's take a peek at the card for today. Obviously, we've got systemic racism. We've got Public Law 36-34. We're going to finish up with CCU versus Doug. We've got Jesse Lujan versus Amanda, and Amanda versus GVB. Won't versus Fisher. Sonny Salas versus JFK High School. Santa and Chamorro Land Trust. Therese versus the Separati Commission. Angel Sablon versus Brenda Kinlan. Brenda Kinian. Chris versus the governor. Dave Take a Height Watts versus PRC. And I don't think I'll get close to being that far. So let's see what we got here. I'm going to hold off on further explanation of systemic racism with the caveat, of course, that I will be wearing my red shirt on Monday. Monday being Red Shirt Monday, of course. I'm happy to say I finally got Facebook to come alive here. Okay, so we'll take a look at the stuff that appeared on the classified pages of the of the newspaper. We no longer have two newspapers. So on the e-edition, which is not a print edition, we have the regular meeting of the Guam Board of Nurse Examiners, a waste of money because the Daily News is no longer a newspaper of general circulation. Gura put out a very large ad for an invitation to bid in the Pacific Daily News, same efficacy, and the notice of the regular board meeting of the Guam Economic Development Authority. Now, you'd think that if anybody would know about this, it would be Gita, that they're throwing our money away by putting these notices in the Daily News. Then I looked to the Post, and the Guam Preservation Trust. I think that may have something to do with, let me have some dramatic music here. The Shippo, the most powerful man on the island. The admiral, a bishop, the governor, yeah, but Shippo. Yeah, and here's what the Guam Preservation Trust has on its agenda. Item 4, new business, 4.3, Association of Chamorros in the Midwest. A world affair. Dayton, Ohio, May 5 through 7. Now, why do you suppose they put an event that's taking place in Dayton, Ohio on their agenda, Jose? I'll give you a hint. It starts with the letter J.
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
J?
Uh-huh. Junket.
Oh, in Ohio.
Yeah, Association of Chamorros in the Midwest. A world affair, Dayton, Ohio, May 5 through 7. Now, if you're interested in the preservation of history, you've got to go to, there are going to be a lot of Chamorros there. And the item before that is World Heritage in the Pacific Shippo Workshop. World Heritage in the Pacific Shippo Workshop. That's May 3 through 5, but they don't tell us where. So do you suppose I'll be spending the Shippo there? Otherwise, why would they put it in the agenda? Uh-huh.
Good question.
Yeah. Okay, and then I have, this one ran in the Post. This is the Land Trust Commission. And item 5 on the Land Trust Commission is administrative and miscellaneous matters. Sorry, folks. You just blew it. You blew the whole thing. And they got some heavy-duty stuff on there, black construction submits its annual status report for previously approved temporary workforce housing facility. So even if they approve that, and 3 more temporary workforce housing facility approvals, it don't count because the notice is flawed. Okay, so we're picking up where we left off yesterday. I'm looking at the picture here of the meeting of the CCU. It's just like yesterday. Joey Duenas is still wearing his hat. And this is the one about, this is the story about Waterworks penning an admonishment to Doug Moylan over lawyers' disputes. And you remember I went through the things that Teresa Rojas, counsel for the Waterworks, said, some of Simon Sanchez's remarks, and went into the whole thing, including bond covenants, what I thought was a pretty detailed description of everything that's troubling the 2 utilities and the CCU. And near the end of the show, Doug Moylan called. And Doug Moylan agreed with me that the CCU or council has no business admonishing a public official. Doug agreed with me that that's my job, not theirs. Remember that. And then he also said that bond covenants have to be subject to Guam law. He said this is something he was able to get into legislation. I don't remember in what capacity. I think in 2006. So Doug called to, at least in his mind, set the record straight and take issue with the things that the CCU said. And he also made a point that I've talked about before, and that is that agency counsel chosen by boards or commissions owe their job tenure to the board or commission. And this tends to have a potential for being a compromising effect, especially when they give unpopular advice. And that's why Doug says that they should operate under his office, where they have a direct link to prosecute, to be on the lookout for illegal conduct, and have a direct link to prosecution. And that's why agency counsel should not be cloistered at the agency, but should operate out of his shop. I tend to see something in what he says, especially about the part about the job protection for agency counsel who from time to time have to give very unpopular advice. And we know, we've seen very vividly now on 2 occasions that when agency counsel gets crosswise with the board or commission, he can be both'd in a heartbeat. A new word, a new verb, to botha.
It almost sounds painful.
To be both'd, which means to be fired by your board or commission at a board meeting or in close proximity thereto.
Even if you have no idea why.
Even if you have no idea why the incriminating evidence turned up at the incriminating agency, even if you have no... In other words, you know, Jose, as Catholics, we understand the concept of invincible ignorance, right? If you have never been exposed to Catholicism, you know, obviously you're not going to Mass, not a mortal sin, because you couldn't know. Invincible ignorance. Once you know, you're on the hook. No more invincible ignorance. So apparently Botha was trying to plead the doctrine of invincible ignorance before that curia known as the CCU. I have no idea. You can't blame me.
Those who utilize invincible ignorance have already took away their invincible ignorance.
Yeah, the mere knowledge of the doctrine knows that they're knowledgeable. Yeah. Talk about catch-22, huh? Yeah. So, you know, I've been mulling this over, as to how this should go. And I've given some of the pros and cons of having agency counsel. If I were on a board, especially a technical board like this one, I would want to have agency counsel in-house myself. As I think I mentioned that when I was director of corrections, counsel came from the AG's office. It's kind of like we're going to have an eclipse this month. That would be how you kept track of your agency counsel time. Well, that's all I can do for you today, Bob. Next eclipse, you can give me something else.
I got you scheduled for the next blue moon.
Exactly. Well, that'd be too soon because that's once a month.
That's once a month.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can understand that. On the other hand, you have to keep the public interest in mind and the vicissitudes of the dynamics of the work situation. So if there were a way that a board or commission could impanel counsel into the classified service, that way they can fire, but they got to go through the procedure, the notice of proposed adverse action, the face-to-face, the findings, etc., and the appeal to Civil Service Commission. That might be the way to go. I don't know. I got to think about it a little bit more, and I got to talk to I got to talk to the stakeholders, Jose. I'll even lend them my walking stick if they want to be stakeholders.
So I might be mixing things up here. Bofa worked for the CCU.
Yeah.
But he was not a part of the AG's office?
No.
So he was not one of those lawyers that were recalled? Is that the term?
No, he re-enlisted.
He re-enlisted. Yeah. He served in the Guard.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why they were able to fire him, because he was not attached to anyone else but the CCU.
Unclassified employee.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And an unclassified employee is the governmental equivalent of the civilian at-will employee. You can fire him for a good reason, can't fire him for a bad reason, or you could fire him for no reason at all. And
yeah, we all know the civil service uses the strategy of invincible ignorance as well.
When it comes to the Hatch Act, that's
all the
right.
time.
Well, they didn't know.
They didn't know.
Yeah. Okay, so, we went through that, and ironically, I didn't get to it yesterday, but in the same ballpark, there's a story that was front page on the Daily News. Guam Waterworks, water agency indisputably owns Dadido wastewater site. Let's take a short break, Jose.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are back again. We're dealing with the waterworks. And the waterworks handles both forms of water, nice, fresh, clean drinking water, and the stuff they flush down the toilet. And the stuff they flush down to the toilet winds up in wastewater treatment plants. We built one wastewater treatment plant on land that was owned by the national government at the time. We had a lease. Later on, the national government gave us the land. Somehow, and it's extremely complicated. I've been through it all, and I had it all firmly in my mind at one time, but then I sneezed, and about half of it got away. It's that
fragile.
Yeah, it's that fragile. But the land was given to the Ancestral Lands Commission. You know, this cockamamie idea that we have that when we get land back from the national government, we give it to the Ancestral Lands Commission, who is supposed to find the pre-condemnation owner or the heirs of the pre-condemnation owner and deed the land to him, her, or them, which happened. The land was given to some Tauruses. The Tauruses sold it for, I think, $15 million to a man who conveyed it to his company, who had a mortgage. The mortgage was foreclosed. Cortec bought the land at the foreclosure sale. A certificate of title was issued showing Cortec as the owner in fee. And then the government of Guam, the registrar of titles, a certain Michael Bora, a name well known to you as the registrar of titles, sued to correct that certificate of title, to put the waterwork, to take Cortec off and put the waterworks on. This resolved into some complicated litigation in which the national government inserted a declaration of interest. And the declaration of interest said in so many words, hey, you guys, we don't know which one of you guys own it. We don't care how hard you fight it out. But note well that this land was given to the government of Guam to be used for a public purpose. And if it's not used for a public purpose, it comes straight back to us. Kind of ominous. Kind of suggesting that if Cortec wins, Cortec doesn't win. In the meantime, the waterworks, gets into conveyance law, things like merger by deed, etc., and said that Cortec's legal theory is wrong, as was the certificate of title issued by the Department of Land Management. Now, who would ever believe a thing like that? So here's how the story goes. The latest item in this long story. The Ancestral Lands Commission never owned the island's Northern District wastewater treatment plant, which means the land never was legally transferred by the commission to its ancestral owners according to the Waterworks Authority, which has engaged in a years-long $220 million legal battle to prove it still owns the site. Now, here's an interesting, perhaps serendipitous occurrence, Jose. Now, the Land Trust Commission, the Waterworks has been litigating the hell out of this, right? And they've had some help, but agency counsel has been carrying the bulk of this litigation. Agency counsel, a certain Dylan Graham Botha, who got Botha on Friday. He's no longer with the Waterworks. So how in the hell is the Attorney General going to be able to pick this up and run with it?
He's going to appoint Botha.
Botha is now at the Attorney General's office. He is now the deputy Attorney General for the Civil Division. Now, what Doug did when he came in, there had been a civil division once in a while. It was split into civil and civil litigation. Now, civil litigation is pretty easy. That's the part of the Attorney General's office that goes to civil trials. Civil is the part of the Attorney General's office that does things like write opinions, give advice to counsel, give advice to agencies, representing agencies, et cetera, at the Civil Service Commission. But when Doug came in, he put them back together. He combined them. It's probably, I could see advantages in either way. A little, maybe some synergy when you've got them all operating on the same shop. But Graham Botha is now in charge. He is the deputy in charge of that whole division. So not only can he pitch into the waterworks litigation, he's got that cast of thousands in the civil division. Oh, no, most of them left. He's got other folks in the civil division that can be enlisted to help here. So, it's interesting. A little serendipity sometimes goes a long way, Jose. Okay, Gortek International, which acquired the Dedido ancestral land in 2015 for $178.1 million, has argued the government of Guam and GWA illegally condemned the company's land without paying and are encroaching on Cortec property. Inverse condemnation means that the government moves in, takes over the land without going through the judicial proceedings. GovGuam and Land Management sued Cortec in 2018, seeking the court's permission to revoke or change the certificates of title issued in 2010 for the land for the disputed property. GWA joined the lawsuit in 2019 as an interested party, asking the court to reject Cortec's ownership of the land. It took them 9 years to do that. Cortec countersued in January 2020, and if the company's claims are successful, GWA and its customers could be asked to pay Cortec as much as $220 million, retroactive to 1980. Superior Court Judge Elise Ariarte in November 2021 rejected GovGuam's request to decide the case in the government's favor, stating Cortec has an ownership interest in the property. So Judge Ariarte entertained counter motions for summary judgment. Now, this is what summary judgment means. Summary judgment means that counsel lays out the facts that are in dispute or that are not in dispute by means of declarations, affidavits, and similar type things supporting the motion. And the motion then tells the judge, on the facts that I've laid before you, here's the law. Applying this law to these facts, I'm entitled to judgment. You don't need to go to trial. And these motions are granted fairly often. When you have counter motions, plaintiff and defendant each file their motions for summary judgment. Sometimes, in strange cases, it can be that the judge will grant each motion in part. If the papers on file before the judge show that there is a genuine issue of disputed fact, there can be no summary judgment, because a judge can't be a trier of fact except in open court in these type situations. So Judge Ariarte found at least that Cortec had an interest in the land without specifying exactly what that interest was and whether it trumped whatever claim that the waterworks had. So we're still fighting this one out. The wastewater site is what the newspaper calls ancestral land. No, the wastewater site is on property formerly owned by the national government, taken in eminent domain. A part of the former Air Force Communication Annex that the federal government later declared access and returned to the government of Guam. The Ancestral Lands Commission in 2006 deeded 257 acres of excess federal land to the estate of Jose Martinez Torres.
No relation.
Oh, good. It's not a conflict of interest
Not a
then for you to preside at this program, right?
I'm conflicted that I have no interest.
Including part deeded part of the communications annex. And this is another flaw in this whole thing, letting the Ancestral Lands Commission make heavy-duty decisions like who owns a, let's see, how much was it? $178 million piece of real property. Do you want your friends and neighbors to do this? It's just not a very workmanlike way to go about it. And you remember an earlier story in the Post, the Land Trust Commission said, you know, we screwed up because they wanted it, they deeded the land and then take it to court and have the court bless it. So they really mishandled this, and we're all going to pay for it twice, just like the ancestral land, right? Yeah, so this another example, you know, land. We heard this argument, you know, land on Guam is not like it is in the States. It's so precious. It's so precious to the people, and it's passed down from generation to generation. Yeah, right up until the time that you can turn it into a $178 million windfall. It's precious. Yeah. The Ancestral Lands Commission deeded 257 acres to the estate of Jose Martinez Torres, including part of the communications annex. This Torres estate in September 2007 sold 252 acres of its ancestral land to Kil Yu Kun for $21.4 million. Yoon in January 2010 deeded the land to his company, Unix Enterprise Corporation. Cortex acquired the property in May 2015 after Unix defaulted on its mortgage to Cortex. GWA's most recent filing in March states the government of Guam, quote, indisputably gave the wastewater property to GWA as part of a 1997 grant deed, and the property has remained with GWA ever since. GWA asked Iriarte to rule that GWA owns the property without the case having to go to trial. Motion for summary judgment. Because GWA owned the property in 2002 when GovGuam transferred adjacent properties to the Ancestral Lands Commission, which the Ancestral Lands Commission transferred to the Torres estate in 2006, GovGuam could not have transferred the plant property to the Ancestral Lands Commission, and therefore the land is out of Cortex chain of title. So obviously you can't convey land that you don't own. Now you do get into something called the bona fide purchaser for value. And Cortex could be a bona fide purchaser for value, which means they'd have a claim back against the Ancestral Lands Commission for this. Because the Ancestral Lands Commission, well, it is a quit claim. It really gets complicated. It was a quit claim deed, but still there may be a claim back against the Ancestral Lands Commission for deeding property that it didn't own. Waterworks says this superior title is further demonstrated by the fact that GWA has openly, continuously, and exclusively been operating the plant to comply with EPA permitting and enforcement obligations to facilitate the needs of Guam's growing northern communities and the military, and to support the expansion of Camp Blas. Openly, continuously, and exclusively. If you want to protect an adverse possession, these are key words. But They aren't complaining. They're not claiming adverse possession. They're claiming a rightful possession by a grant. Cortec on March 15 asked Iriarte to reject GWA's arguments and to instead decide the ownership issue in favor of Cortec. According to Cortec, the 1997 grant deed did not give GWA the deed to ancestral land, only an opportunity to stake its claim on the land. That sounds like something Ron McNinch would say. Stakeholders.
Stakeholders.
Yeah. Well, you see what you do is you just send the stakeholders out there to the four corners of the land. When they put their stakes in, that's your claim. Yeah. All right. Now this is kind of something that I'm not aware of, that there could be a conveyance that gives you the opportunity to stake a claim.
Is that legal squatting?
That's a good question. Now, GWA never surveyed the land or made a claim, so the property automatically reverted to the government. Now, this sounds like hocus pocus to me, because if you have a deed, when A gives B a deed, that conveyance is complete, as between A and B. When B goes to whoever the recorder is for that district, here it's the Department of Land Management, when he records that deed at the Department of Land Management, that is notice to the whole world as to who owns that land. You can say, I have no idea where the street address, doesn't matter. That recordation puts the whole world on notice who owns that land. That's why if you buy land, where's the first place you go? Well, you go to title company. The title company will go and they'll research that title. And if you don't own the land, the title insurance company is not a risk insurer. They don't insure. It's not like car insurance, knowing that everybody that they insure is going to make a claim sooner. They insure people because they don't want any claims, because they're sure that you own the land. And that's what title insurance companies do, and that's what buyers of real property do when they're paying close attention to what they do. But to say GWA never surveyed the land, which is not necessary if you have a deed that shows a real property description of the land, and of course a deed must. And if you have a deed, you don't make a claim, you own it. And then this automatically reverted to the government. That's a tough one. GWA failed to register its interest in the property as required by law and did not even endeavor to memorialize any of the instruments it has claimed under throughout this litigation on the certificates of title of the property. Let's take a short break, and I'm going to come back and give you chapter and verse on certificates of title.
Today, this is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
You know, we should be playing bumper music like that all the time, Jose. That is so tall tales. Yeah. Okay. Wrapping this up here. I'm reading the last paragraph. GWA failed to register its interest in the property as required by law and did not even endeavor to memorialize any of the instruments it has claimed under throughout this litigation on the certificates of title for the property. Now, I'm going to tell you, what I think ought to happen. This is what ought to happen. We ought to introduce legislation to abolish the certificates of title. They are useless instruments. They can amount to a trap for the unwary, and they have no place in the 21st century. 19th century, yeah, that's when a guy named Torrens, not Torres, Torrens invented them before we had any of the kinds of modern marvels that we have right now. So, the certificate of title was not just evidence of the title, that was the title to the real property. And a person, we have an old case, Wells versus Lizama, said that you could rely on the certificate of title. Now, I went through the whole thing about memorials, et cetera, when we were talking about the great title scam for the Redemptus Mater Seminary. But here's what happens. If land is registered, which means it had to have been surveyed, the maps and all kinds of papers taken before the court in a land registration proceeding, the court enters a decree declaring the land registration. The registrar of titles then enters a certificate. It's got the real property description. It tells you who owns the land in fee simple. There are blanks for memorials telling you what encumbrances, mortgages, whatever else is in the chain of title of that real property. Now, unfortunately, people look at that certificate of title and they think it's the same thing as a certificate of title for your car. It's not, because in order for a mortgage to be memorialized on that certificate of title, the mortgagee takes the mortgage, an executed mortgage, to land management and records it at land management. Then he's got to apply to have that memorial entered on the certificate of title. A lot of people just don't do that. They just don't pay any attention. If the certificates of title worked, we wouldn't need title companies. But they don't work. So those memorials don't get placed on the certificate of title. Now, when a certificate of title is issued, a new one is issued, the deputy registrar does an abstract of title. He traces the whole certificate of title and puts those memorials on the certificate of title. At least he's supposed to, but we found out the hard way with the Redemptus Mater that didn't happen. So to say that because land management, because Waterworks didn't do the formalities with certificate of title, they don't own the property, I don't think so. They should have if they were doing a workmanlike job. And, of course, I don't even know if that land is registered land. That isn't part of this story here. Anyhow, this story is not going to have a happy ending. Somebody's going to wind up taking it in the financial shorts really, really hard. And I hope it's not the taxpayers of Guam. But we should, I suppose, take a certain amount of comfort that we have a lawyer at the Attorney General's office who is quite familiar with this litigation.
He's going to walk in the doors and they're going to go, "Why are you here? We got rid of you." He's going to say, "I have no idea." And we're going to do this all over again. It will be an interesting meeting.
Mr. Botha, a counselor, who owns the land where the waterworks is situated? Your Honor, to be perfectly honest with you, I have no idea. Oh, no, I'm thinking of Walt Parkinson. Yeah, okay, we got just 3 minutes before the big halftime show. Let me just check and see who's with us on Facebook today, and then I'll come back to Jesse Lujan versus Amanda. Let's see, I've got Jose Ted Pajago, Brad Wood, and Oliver Malakas, Bonnie Suba, Colin Clark. Colin Clark, if you'll notice, called us to attention here at the beginning of the show. And let's see, Ishmael Velez. I was watching a show called 10 Ways to Avoid a Shark Attack, but was surprised that they're staying out of the water wasn't one of the options. Must have been produced by Gov Guam. Parks and Rec. They run the beaches, right?
That's a long study.
Yeah. Bonnie Suba, no tall tales for 3. It's going to be tough, Bonnie. It's going to be tough. But, you know, Easter is the biggest time of the year for Christians, for Catholics. So as much as we hate it, we are prepared to make that sacrifice, aren't we, Jose?
Senator St. Nicholas had said, "How dare you?"
Mr. Christmas.
Mr. Christmas.
Yeah. Bonnie Suba is here. Yeah, let's see. Brad Wood chimes in, real sharks are like boony dogs. They run away. And we got Brad Wood, Lonnie Salas, Colin Clark is talking about E. Liak Gifinu tomorrow. E. Liak.
E.
Yeah, E means E is the in Chamorro. Yeah? E. Liak. But you want it to be a person. C. Liak, right? Yeah. I'll let you guys hash that one out on Facebook. All right, let's break for the big halftime show here. Great bumper music, Jose. Keep it up.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Where did all the COVID money go? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Congressional Republicans claim billions of dollars earmarked for schools during the pandemic may have been used improperly to promote ideological agendas.
The chairs of the House Oversight, House Education, and Coronavirus panel wrote a letter to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona demanding answers about using COVID funds for things like LGBTQ plus cultural competency, coaching of educators on racial slurs. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer didn't hold back.
You've got a situation where they said, let's use this money. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to push a radical new left-wing agenda.
A spokesperson for the Department of Education says they're reviewing the letter, and the California Department of Education, which is the largest in the nation, says the letter is, quote, factually untrue.
Fox's Marianne Rafferty. Former Vice President Mike Pence will not appeal a judge's order that he must testify to a grand jury investigating former President Trump's actions after the 2020 election loss. The former president had also tried to block the testimony on executive privilege grounds. Saber rattling from China, staging an aircraft carrier group off the coast of Taiwan as a bipartisan group of congressmen met Wednesday in California with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. California Democrat Congressman Pete Aguilar.
In the 40 years since the Taiwan Relations Act has passed, the partnership between the United States and Taiwan has been rooted in the pillars of security, shared economic interests, and democracy.
China calls the meeting a threat to its sovereignty. It claims Taiwan as its own. Now we learn a congressional delegation has just landed in Taipei for talks with Taiwan's vice president. Beijing, meanwhile, has just cut deals with Iran and Saudi Arabia to resume diplomatic relations and travel between the countries. Wall Street mixed on Wednesday. The Dow up 80 points, NASDAQ down 19. America listens to Fox News.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Fox News.
There's a shocking report out about sexual abuse by clergy in Baltimore.
The Maryland Attorney General is now accusing clergy from the Catholic Archdiocese of decades of, quote, pervasive and persistent child sex abuse and repeated dismissal or cover-up by the church hierarchy. The AG says a 4-year investigation uncovered at least 600 children abused over 60 years. Many of the accused priests are no longer living. The Archbishop told the Baltimore Sun it is a day of deep sadness.
Fox's Trace Gallagher. 2 states adopting bills to prevent doctors from offering gender-affirming care to people younger than 18. The bill signed by Idaho's governor makes it a crime. Indiana's new law empowers the state's medical board to punish doctors who offer things like puberty blockers to children. The Justice Department has tentatively settled the lawsuit over the 2017 mass shooting at a Texas church that will pay victims and their families more than $144 million. More than 24 people were killed when Devin Kelly opened fire at the First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs. He'd served in the Air Force before the attack. A judge had previously ruled the service was 60% liable because it had failed to submit Kelly's assault conviction during his time in the Air Force to a national database. Kelly died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. An elected official in Australia may be the first to file a defamation suit against artificial intelligence.
What if AI defames you? Is the company that creates the app responsible? Well, we may soon learn the answer to that as an Australian mayor threatens a lawsuit against ChatGPT's parent company over false claims that he served time in prison for bribery. Brian Hood says he was the whistleblower in the bribery scheme he uncovered while working for a subsidiary of the Reserve Bank of Australia. Hood's attorneys are demanding a correction, or they say they will sue. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $4,100 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 671-475-4545, Upper Tumon 671-647-5626, or in Dededo 671-633-4473.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Tell it like it is, Jose.
This is how it is, Bob. If you too want to become I'm a Tailgater Rogues Gallery participant, just point your browser to thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. There you'll find the picture with an I'm a Tailgater t-shirt and a beard. If you click on that, you'll go right to the site where you can order your shirt. So that when it arrives, take a selfie and then send that selfie to the Point's WhatsApp phone number at 671-797-8255, and you too can see yourself in the Rogues Gallery.
Can you get the beard there too, Jose?
The beard is not included.
Oh.
Just like the batteries.
Beard not included. Okay. All right. So going back to the card here, next item on the card is Jesse Lujan versus Amanda Shelton. And I start with stories that ran in both the Post and the Daily News. The Post starts their headlines there, scathing report. Members of GVB board fail to discuss conflicts. Just ahead of a rescheduled oversight hearing set to take place this Thursday morning, now that was this morning, Senator Jesse Lujan disclosed he was given, at his request, a copy of an investigative report into allegations against current and former members of the Visitors Bureau Board of Directors. Lujan, in an interview with the Post, confirmed the report, which she obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request around noon Wednesday, contained allegations that certain members did not disclose their ties to organizations that receive government funds through GVB. Quote, it's very, I'll say, interesting. It's a pretty scathing report, Lujan said. And before clarifying, the investigation was done by a, quote, Business Control and Compliance Committee at the request of GVB management.
A Business Control and Compliance Committee?
Mm-hmm.
Where? From where?
GVB.
Oh, within GVB.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We've talked about that. They appointed several people to sit on that Business Control Committee or Business Risk Control Committee. The report has been sent to the Office of Public Accountability, Lujan said. One organization associated with at least one board member, according to Lujan, previously received around $350,000 annually from GVB, which then increased to about $1.8 million a year.
Wait, what? That's a huge increase.
Yeah. Members purposely, supposedly, according to the report, never disclosed that they're part or board members of this nonprofit organization that was created and funded basically by GVB. There was never a disclosure, he said. The Republican lawmaker told the Post he first heard of the investigation through public statements made by Carl Gutierrez, also known as the Carl, GVB's president and CEO. The public is owed more details on those allegations, according to Lujan, who said the report also includes responses from some board members who spoke to the committee handling the investigation. There's a section where a board member, basically, and I don't know what he meant, supposedly was approached about a situation, and he said that, quote, I was conned into this. I don't know what that means. Conned into a vote or conned into a situation, Lujan said. Nothing alleged in the report would cause him at this time to request Speaker Titlahi rescind appointees of the legislature and the GV board, he told the Post. He plans to enter a summary of the investigative report into the record at today's hearing. Should the hearing be canceled or postponed at the last minute, Lujan said, he would still discuss the document with the media. Now, here's what he's referring to. You recall that Shelton was off island, and Jesse is the vice chair of the committee. He scheduled an oversight hearing on a day when Shelton was off island. She came back early, and 6 minutes before the hearing was to start, issued a notice that the hearing was canceled.
So that wasn't so much as an announcement to us, but a shot across the bow of Shelton, so to speak.
You mean Lujan?
Lujan's was a shot across the bow.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I titled it in the card as Jesse Lujan versus Amanda Shelton. Yeah. So, here's Jesse standing on the rug, and all of a sudden she jerks the rug out from under him. He flips over and lands on his face. And then some of the talk about this is that Sam Shinohara, who runs United Airlines, is or was on the board, is Shelton's uncle. So it gets a little bit complicated as you get into it, but let's get back to the story here. So, it happened before. Lujan is wondering, now that I've got this scathing report, is she going to do it again? As far as I know, the hearing went off this morning, and of course it won't hit the news until tomorrow, so I won't be able to cover it until Monday, but I suspect it's going to be very interesting. If that happens, I will read a synopsis of the findings, Lujan said. I have what has been released to me. I'm a public official in a public office, and I owe it to the public to release the findings. Now, that's a refreshing approach to public office, isn't it? Any conflicts alleged in the report could have been handled by board members, according to the senator, by disclosing their financial interests like other public officials and excusing themselves from any vote where their conflict of interest. A, quote, immediate solution to the concerns raised by the report has already been introduced, Lujan told the Post, through a bill from Tello that applies mandatory disclosure laws for public officials to all members of the GVB board. We're on our way to fixing it. We already have a fix, Lujan said, and we kind of thought this because this conflicts have always been brought up in the past as well, but we didn't know the severity of things and what these things have been taken to. GVB oversight hearing is scheduled to begin at 9:30 this morning. We want to fix the industry. That part of the economy hasn't bounced back yet, and until then, every cent is precious, and we need to invest all we can in that precious commodity that we have lost and hope to gain back, Lujan said. We need accountability and transparency. People need to be held accountable, and we want to do the right thing during the start over of tourism, and we want to do it right. Nice sentiments from Senator Jesse Lujan. Okay, as usual, guess where this appeared first?
Candid News.
Candid News, and here's what Troy says. Secret meetings, multi-million-dollar favored contracts, and corruption alleged against corporate giants on GVB board. A report released by the Visitors Bureau President and CEO Carl Gutierrez to the legislature accuses titans of Guam's tourism and airline industries of corruption. The report was prepared by a special committee of investigators appointed by Gutierrez called the Business Risk Compliance and Control Committee, BRCC, which forwarded its findings to the Office of Public Accountability and to the Attorney General. Unfortunately, nowadays, when we say have to the Attorney General, timing is everything. If it was referred to the one who left in January, so what? If it was referred to the current one, a lot of wood. The report, which has not been publicly released, is preceded by a 4-page summary which was leaked to Candid, along with Gutierrez's letter to Senator Lujan, the vice chairman of the Legislative Tourist Committee. The chairman of the committee, Amanda Shelton, has refused to conduct an oversight hearing of GVB, despite the allegations of Gutierrez has made for nearly 2 years now that corruption persists among some members of the board and vendors of the Bureau. And we talked about the last oversight. Amanda Shelton's uncle, according to the report summary, is among those board members accused of being involved in unlawful conduct. You were in the culinary business. Maybe you can help me with this. I read this sentence. Shelton's uncle, according to the report summary, is among those board members accused of being involved in unlawful conduct. Could I say the plot thickens? Or does one have to know the culinary angles before?
The plot is thickening.
The plot is thickening. Well, there it is.
And we didn't have to watch the pot.
Yeah. But if you watch it, you know it'll never happen?
Boil over.
It'll never boil. If you watch the pot, it's not what the pot does. Everybody knows a watched pot never boils. The summary dropped major names that revolve around a nonprofit organization, Guam Sports Entertainment, Inc., GSEI, United Airlines, and hotel conglomerate PHR Ken Corporation. Owing to board actions with little or no public discussion and an admission by GVB Chairman Milton Morinaga that he was uncomfortable because of a private meeting with GVB directors Sam Shinohara, Ben Ferguson, that involves Steve Ruder, owner of Rims, which was a GVB vendor participating in an active procurement. It's not sounding so good. The GM believes it necessary to investigate further. That's what Carl said. The report summary states, soon these observations led to scrutiny of GVB's financial support of GSEI, Guam Sports Events, Inc., a local IRS, local organized 501c3 nonprofit that is the principal sponsor and organizer for the United Airlines Guam Marathon. Now, I watched that whole thing with eagle eyes, Jose. I ran my first marathon in 1978, the 7th Guam Marathon. And the Guam Marathon was just a bunch of guys who put it on, you know, and the marathon I ran in, we had 14 runners. But the marathons got very popular, and they grew to over 100. And sure enough, when it got that big, it couldn't be just amateurs anymore. United Airlines gleamed onto it. So we had the United Airlines Marathon, and a lot of people booked down here from Japan to run in that marathon. So I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought, well, you know, if it gets people out there running 26 miles, if it's United Airlines, good on them. Great deal. And I can understand why they'd want to do it, because it brings tourists to the island, gets us a lot of international earned media. Now, however, we find this out. The principal sponsor and organizer for the marathon, the United Airlines Marathon, and the Guam International Marathon events that receive significant funding and material logistics support from GVB that included payments to or on behalf of RIMS, Steve Reuter's outfit. So Reuter sits in a meeting with Morinaga, Ben Ferguson, and Sam Shinohara during an active procurement where RIMS, his company, is submitted a proposal to the GVB for money that's going to be used to fund the United Airlines Marathon. It's all getting pretty close together, isn't it? Corporate records at RevTax showed that GVB Chairman Morinaga incorporated GSEI. GVB Director Ben Ferguson is the president and managing director of GSEI. And Reuter was a director of GSEI. Well, you know, they could have had concurrent meetings. They could have had the Visitors Bureau and GSEI meet at the same time. Why? Oh, wait a minute.
Nope.
Where's that beep beep, Jose? Also, Chairman Morinaga, Director Ferguson, and at least one other GSEI director were employed by PHR Ken Corporation. I think that's Hilton and the big guys, right? PHR Ken and Director Shinohara is with United Airlines. Together, these two companies hold 290 votes that represent 57% of GVB's current membership. The GM thus tasked GVB legal counsel to investigate GVB's dealings with GSEI and provide a report to the Business Risk Committee. The summary contends that only 2 of the 12 GVB board members voluntarily cooperated with the investigation that led to the summary and the accusations. The other 10 didn't want to play. I wonder if a gentleman named Miranda was president. You know, that guy who always says, you got the right to remain silent. Among those issues found was the difficulty the public would have trusting that board members are loyal to GVB and their fiduciary duties over board funds when so many conflicts of interest are woven together. Among potential conflicts, the summary points to include those of the head of the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, who is a member, and even that of the governor's son, GVB Board Vice Chair Joaquin Cook. All the board's conflicted and intertwined interests may cause the public to call into question the board's action or lack thereof on any necessary corrective measures the measure states. Now, there's more to this report, but I'm going to hang on to it. We do have that oversight hearing today. I suspect that this will shed even more light on it. But this is as big a story as, actually it's an even bigger story than the ancestral landowners getting screwed out of their land by the admiral. Beep, beep, beep. Yeah, this is a big story, and I want to make sure that I spread it out a little bit so that it's thorough and that I cover all the angles. But this report is dynamite. And when I read what Joe McDonald prepared, his first paper, I concluded Carl was onto something. Carl was right. There were a lot of problems there, and it's just as well that they didn't have meetings during that time. Yeah.
But how did they say how long this has been going on? Is this part of the Guam Marathon that PIC was advertising for a while.
Yeah.
That's a part of the circuit of marathons. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see in here where they said that money was coming from directly from GVB or part of appropriations from the TAF. 'Cause at one time, you have to go through the legislature first.
TAF goes to GVB.
Uh-huh.
GVB spends that money without an appropriation.
Okay.
Now, the legislature has from time to time said, GVB, you got to give it to these guys.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, this money went from GVB to that corporation, and from that corporation to United Airlines. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This is this is probably going to cause the TAF to be appropriated somewhere else, as far as somebody else controlling who gets it. Then.
Well, you know, like Jesse said, Tello has a bill because see the elected members, the ones that are elected by the members, at least up until now, conventional wisdom is that they don't have to file the financial statements that the appointed members do, and they're not subject to the same ethical rules that the appointed members are. So this is, you know, this is a hard one to balance. Because if you're talking the visitor industry, you can't take the man off the street and expect him to make enlightened decisions. And I suspect that an awful lot of the people the governor appoints go to the governor and say, hey, Governor, I really love to travel. Can you put me on GVB so I can take some junkets? And probably don't know anything at all about the visitor industry, which is a complicated industry. So you need that expertise. But, you know, if you represent an airline, you represent a hotel, you benefit when tourists come in. So I've almost figured out the way that agency lawyers should be employed, but I got a lot of work to do here before I come up with a solution for GVB. Okay, let's head for Wrigley Field.
Good day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help. Next item I'm going to pick up here on the card is Sunny Solace versus JFK High School. And let me have the side camera here for a minute, Jose. Maybe I'll do it at the front camera. I probably have a better chance of doing it right. This is JFK High School. And you can see there's a flag hanging from the balcony there. Now, the flag is a blue stripe, a red stripe, a white stripe, a red stripe, and a blue stripe. What is that flag for?
I have no idea.
I'm going to read the caption under that. This ran in the online edition of the Daily News, which is, we have the e-edition and the online edition. The e-edition looks like a paper newspaper. The online edition looks like, you know, like a website. So this is the caption that appears under that picture. A transgender flag decorates the center of John F. Kennedy High School on November 22, 2021. There it is, a transgender flag.
I never knew.
Yeah. And here's the story. This is a letter to the Daily News. Letter. We just want to be able to be ourselves. Guam's transgender community seeks acceptance, which I guess means we have our own flag that we want to fly on school property too.
Right.
And it goes like this. In response to, quote, bill would allow people to change sex on birth certificate by order. And the letter says, I wish people were more accepting of the transgender community. It hurts so much knowing that the place I call home sees us as something to fear or make fun of. We don't want to hurt anybody or make anyone uncomfortable. We just want to be able to be ourselves. I understand that people don't want this change, but I'll keep trying to make something happen because I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong or like nobody is on your side. I don't want the trans youth to have to go through this when we can fight for our rights now and not make it as difficult for them to live their lives. Guam doesn't have the resources to perform the reassignment surgery, so this is our option. Not everyone can afford to leave Guam, get the surgery, and come back. Some of us can't even afford to live here at all. It's sad to see so many people making rude remarks about this bill and what it represents. All I wanted was for people to be more accepting and caring of trans people. I hope the bill goes through and I hope nobody abuses it because this is for the people who are actually struggling with their gender status. I hope the system pulls through and sees that this can help. Even if the bill is shot down again, please have hope. Our community is strong. And you are loved, my trans friends.
What does this have to do with that bill?
Well, they have their own flag.
Yeah,
They want to be able to change reality by changing their birth certificate. So we don't want to hurt anybody or make anyone uncomfortable. Then why don't you just go and do your thing and shut up about it? Wouldn't that work, Jose?
It would work, but I'm trying to understand why. What are the rights that are being denied to anybody? Everyone's always, all these marginalized groups are always decrying our rights are taken away from us.
Yeah.
What are those rights? They never spell them out there.
No.
They always spell about, the right seems to be like our right to tell you how to interact with us, whether you like it or not.
Well, you know, if you examine it from legal standpoints, there are rights and duties, privileges and immunities. I'm sorry, privileges and disabilities. Now, let me start out with privileges and disabilities. The attorney-client privilege says that that communication between an attorney and his client, they must remain secret, and no official, no judge, no lawyer can make anyone disclose that privileged communication. Priest, penitent, the confession, the same thing. So that is a privilege that a lawyer and his client have, a priest and his penitent have. The immunity is, the disability is the other half of the mechanism, because people who ordinarily can examine communications, can subpoena, can force, etc., have a disability when they come face to face with a privilege. Okay, that's privilege and immunity. Now let's talk about rights and duties. If A has a right against B, then B has a duty to A. Rights do not exist without duties. That's why this favorite slogan of the left: healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right. Well, if it's a right, whose duty is it to provide? And the answer, well, the government, of course. So, if you want to assert a right, then you have to be able to describe the duty that creates that, or that makes that right happen. And you can't have a right without a duty. Okay, so what this is saying, Jose, they're not looking for rights. They're looking for privileges. The privilege that they're looking for would create a disability in you to question how a man can become a woman, why we should attempt to change reality by marks on a piece of paper issued over at Public Health. So they're not looking for rights. They're looking for privilege in the legal sense. And I'm not willing to assume that duty. My rights, such as they are, arise from natural law. And they arise in the absence of any duty because they come from God, not from man. So this whole mindset here, this whole idea, this whole undertaking, this whole bit of cultural Marxism is what it is, exactly. This whole branch of identity politics is grounded in nothing but precatory pretending. There's a good phrase, precatory pretending. I wish you guys would all pretend along with me. And if you don't pretend like I do, you're a bad person. That's really what this is about.
And that's the. I think there ought to be a discussion because I for one don't like being told I'm not allowed to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. If anything, I should be allowed to think the way I want to think. Do I have the right to act on it? There's laws against acting out on certain emotions and thoughts. But to me, this is almost like you're forcing people to participate in things that make them uncomfortable, and they should not have to participate in it.
Exactly.
Now, what also makes this interesting is that if everyone is an individual, why are we always grouping people in identity politics? And I know this sounds like a tangent, but we have an incident that happened in Nashville where the identified shooter is a transgender person.
It's a woman.
A woman, right?
Pretending to be a man.
But all of a sudden we're not allowed to use that generalized identity politics to group everyone together. But before you're supposed to when you're dealing with everybody that way. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it all ties into the P word, privilege. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have a duty to engage in the pretending under every circumstance. Mm-hmm. And when a member of that group does something wrong, then you must pretend that has nothing to do with the group.
We also seem to pick and choose which groups are allowed to be marginalized and which ones are not. Christians and Catholics are not allowed to be marginalized, but other groups are allowed to. I heard something that just made a whole lot of sense to me the other day. Why is it that nobody is calling out these drag queens as the modern day blackface? You're taking something that belongs to a woman and making a caricature of it, making a gross caricature of it also, and everyone seems to celebrate that modern day blackface.
I did see something online of calling it exactly that. Yeah. Okay, I got, let me see who I got here. Probably another Joe. Dr. Ron McNinch on the birth certificate bill. I think we're going to head for Churchill Downs, Ron, and then we'll find you in the bleachers out there in Churchill Downs.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatnya location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Jerome McDonald says 26 miles or 26.4 miles, Bob. That's 26.2 miles, not 26. I rounded down. I just said 20, but it's 26.2 miles. And I'll tell you why it is 26.2 miles. It was the distance from Marathon to Athens. A guy named Spiridon rode from Marathon to Athens to tell the Athenians about the victory at Marathon. And it was part of the Olympic Games, which guess where they started? In Greece. In 1896, we thought we would do it, in the rest of the world. So we started doing it every 4 years. And the distance was 25 miles until the the Olympics were held in London. And the planners of the marathon said, we want the marathon to run past or maybe to finish in front of Buckingham Palace or some palace. So in order to make that happen, the marathon had to be lengthened to 26.2 miles. And it has been 26.2 miles is.
2. T-O-O.
2 also, right. Yeah, so here I am in Churchill Downs out in the center field bleachers. The horses are being called to the post. You heard the bugle there just a minute ago. Who do I stumble into? Ron, don't say hello to the people of Guam. Say hello to the people of Louisville this time, okay?
Have a day, Senator. No, absolutely. I've walked about 8 Guam marathons of various types, and they're always enjoyable. And I usually start a couple hours early, a few hours early. It takes about 8 hours to walk one.
Well, the best
time.
Not bad. I was running too heavy in those days. I was running at 190. If I was running at what I'm running now, I could have taken a half an hour off it because they say a pound is worth a minute in a marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, and a degree one way or the other from 42 degrees can cost you as much as a minute. Anyhow, what did you want to tell me about changing birth certificates?
Well, I hope that, related to this bill, I hope that everyone who has an interest in these kinds of things reads this bill, because the language is just, I believe the language is pretty problematic, because not only does it change the name on the birth certificate, it seals all of the proceedings also. And so basically you can never know, that a person's name has been changed, among other things. And so there are just some pretty basic problems that need to be examined with this bill. I think also, here's the other problem. There's no genitalia are going to be designated as female. We have women's shower rooms and women's dressing rooms and women's restrooms and everything else. We have a large tourism industry. and we could end up having difficulties, when encounters are made on that basis. And so I think that some additional thought and consideration should be given to this. And Guam's, I did the statistical analysis. If we're talking about adult males over 18 that consider themselves transgender, the average nationally is 0.3% of the population. That's about 130 persons only. And so we'd be creating a major policy for basically 130 persons, basically. And I think that there's probably much better ways to address problems or issues as they're defined from a policy standpoint than this kind of bill. To me, it's very problematic in a number of ways.
Well, Ron, to me, I take a very simple approach to this: systemic racism. The fact that you write down on a piece of paper, if you put a sign in front of the orange rice at the fiesta that said red rice, it doesn't change the color of the rice. And that's what this whole mechanism is all about. All of the examples that you've talked about, those bridges have been jumped off of in other communities. Where you don't segregate bathrooms and shower rooms and locker rooms based on sex. And that's what this is all about. This whole transgenderism narrative, and there is once it starts, there's no stopping. And now the narrative wants to take control of reality and change birth certificates so that someone who is a male, has always been a male, will always be a male, regardless of any surgical alterations to his body, is still going to be a male. And changing pieces of paper only leads to confusion and other kinds of trouble.
Well, sir, there's a couple of other points that I think are worthy of a healthy community discussion. Some parents have either been talked into or have been encouraged to view their young children under 12 years of age, as having, a transgender, condition that then they'll require hormone treatments or surgery. And some psychiatrists have noted that a lot of these, particularly parents that are expressing these views, they appear to have a form of Munchausen by proxy. And that's become a concern of late, is that that parents who are essentially labeling their own children or encouraging their own children to adopt these particular views are doing so not because of a belief that the child actually has an issue, but because the parent themselves is seeking attention. And we call that Munchausen by proxy. And so that's another element of this conversation that in the future is going to have to be dealt with, because these are I think that some of these things in many ways are very troubling. As much as we want to accommodate and be respectful and polite to everyone, there has to be a hard policy basis for protecting children and protecting young people and protecting the rights of others. Where is the voice of women and girls in this entire discussion? That's what the real Joe said earlier. In fact, who speaks for young women and girls? Who speaks for women at all in these discussions? That, to me, is a very important part of the equation. And unfortunately, often women are shouted down when they have concerns about these issues, which I think is also fundamentally unfair.
You're absolutely right, Ron. And if someone wants to be treated in a particular way, then the best way to do it is to stop talking about it. And
Morgan Freeman said the exact same thing about racism, and I think that's a very practical view. Is that there's a thing in science called the Heisenberg effect, and that is things exist only when they're observed. And so are we, in effect, by talking about it, creating a problem? Sometimes that deserves some healthy conversation also.
Yeah, I'll give you a personal observation. There was someone who was able to present as a female, and the presentation was so accurate that 99% of the people who encountered that person would have identified that person as a female, right up until the time that he had to tell you that he was a transgender, making you wonder, what's the point here? It's not that I was born a man and I really wanted to be a woman. It's that I was born a man, and I want you to know that I am not a woman. I am something more special than that. So it's a pretty good feel for psychiatrists, but going all the way back to Dr. Kinsey, who screwed things up so bad that I don't know that we'll ever sort them out. I put about as much faith in the psychiatry profession when they're dealing with stuff like this, when they're making these public pronouncements, not when they're dealing with their patients. I think that we should award psychiatrists who come out with some of these theories with the Fauci Award.
Right. Well, I believe there are a number of psychiatrists who've spoken out, and they've expected to practice this politically correct, narrative-based, basic affirmation process, which a lot of them strongly agree with. And it's definitely affected the practice of psychiatry in many ways. That is, some psychiatrists feel as if the environment that they have to work with and their patients.
Systemic racism is a powerful force, Ron.
Yes. Well, very good. Great show, sir. And I just, thought I'd give a couple of observations.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Very, very good. On point. Thanks, Ron. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter, sir.
Yeah, Troy wrote a piece, Reflections, 30 Pieces of Silver and the Sacrifice of Doing What is Right, that I suppose I could characterize as Troy's Easter homily.
Oh, boy. So Troy's the next Archbishop.
Yeah, so I'm going to start reading it, and in light of the fact that tomorrow is Good Friday, I'm going to stiff the president today. I know it's going to hurt his feelings, but I'm not going to say goodbye to him today. Here's what Troy says. Sometimes 30 pieces of silver are all it will take to transact our souls for the devil offers in exchange our self-gratification. The problem is that in the glimmer of a seemingly good deal, we don't realize the dealer is the devil, and we don't recognize that avarice is unquenchable. Those 30 pieces of silver never will satisfy whatever it is we desire. We've all been guilty at least once in our lives of trading integrity for a quick buck or an easy way out of a tough spot. Often it's not easy to make the right choice. We can be critical of the obvious corruption and greed of the Leon Guerrero administration and the former Torres administration and the CMI, and rightfully so. That's easy. Are we willing to be critical of the not-so-obvious cupidity in society? What of ourselves and our conduct? Are we willing to be, for instance, we will take the political offer of a government job and sidestep our convictions by defending an administration we know is corrupt? People need to make a living, right? Then consider a young mother who walks into a mini mart and steals an empanada for her 6-year-old child. Kids need to eat, right? Ethically, what's the difference? How one qualifies their actions what is right and true. No one said it's easy to do what's right. On Guam, the legislature and the governor recently enacted an across-the-board 22% pay raise for GovGuam employees. Knowing full well they committed the taxpayers to an additional expense of $50 million for pay raises while ignoring decades of problems. They created a drastic disparity in pay between those and comparable positions in the private sector. 3, not everyone deserves that pay raise. Is it wonderful for those families to receive additional income? Sure. Was it a proper use of public money? And was it earned? We witnessed the unraveling of the corrupt boost program in the CNMI during legislative hearings last year. Those hearings focused on the actions of the Torres administration officials who ran the program. But what are the people who took advantage of it? I'm not talking about those who applied or even some of the businesses that received the grant. For example, how did anyone paid to market the program justify in their heads that anything more than the cost of one Facebook post needed to be spent to market a program? Well, that's it. Troy's final words for the year. My final words for the year. See you Monday.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
It's the One China policy and its sovereignty. House Speaker McCarthy says China doesn't get a say.
China can never tell us what to do. As Speaker of the House, I'm going to meet with whoever we want to meet with whatever country.
McCarthy said the U.S. must continue arms sales to Taiwan to deter a possible invasion. China stationed an aircraft carrier off the southeast coast of Taiwan during the meeting in California as a show of intimidation. The congressional delegation has also just arrived in Taipei for more talks with Taiwanese officials. Beijing has just brokered a deal between longtime rivals Iran and Saudi Arabia to reopen diplomatic missions in each other's countries. Palestinian militants have fired more rockets into southern Israel after another clash with Muslim worshippers at Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque. 3 Kansas City police officers are recovering from gunshot wounds suffered when a drug sting operation Wednesday turned into a gun battle.
We got individuals in a car that's heavily armed, that's dealing drugs, and as the officers attempted to effect an arrest, that's when the shots were fired.
Police Chief Carl Oakman says the officers suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries. 3 suspects were shot as well. A New York City police officer has been shot and wounded.
The officer, whose name was not given, has been on the job for 3 months. He and his partner were alerted by a city bus driver about a dispute over a seat. An altercation led to a foot chase. NYPD Chief of Detectives James Essig says when the officer caught up to the suspect,
a brief struggle occurred. The perpetrator fired one shot, striking our officer in the right hip.
That officer is in a Queens hospital.
Fox's Gernal Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
Jason in the House, the Jason Chaffetz podcast. There is always someone doing something stupid somewhere. Dive deeper than the headlines and the party lines as I take on American life, politics, and entertainment. Join me, Jason Chaffetz, every Wednesday as I shed light on the news and make some predictions along the way. You never know who will drop in. Subscribe now on foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now.
We will hear more about the immediate aftermath of the 2020 presidential election from the perspective of the former vice president.
Former Vice President Mike Pence says he will comply